Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Dom from Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at this beast. It's the Aputure LightStorm 600D Pro, an LED light fixture that can basically rival a small HMI, which we'll get into in a second. But the main purpose of this video is I'm going to be taking two of these fixtures and two awesome Aputure modifiers out on location with me in like a filmmaking setting so we can see what this light is all about. So let's check it out. So let's quickly talk about the build of this light and some of its design choices. If you were familiar with the Aputure 300D, you'd notice immediately that pretty much everything about the 600D package is larger. The fixture is larger, the ballast is way bigger, even the cables are chunkier. The fixture itself is pretty simple. Its housing is a mix of metal and this matte black polycarbonate, and you can see on the top here all of that space for ventilation, and same thing on the bottom, but it's these hexagonal holes. And behind those, you'll see that large white cooling fan. The fixture has 360-degree rotation on the yoke and almost full rotation with that reflector on, and the yoke feels super nice and sturdy to operate. The 600D features the Bowens mount, which is standard on most of Aputure's COB LED lights, but the locking mechanism is a bit different on the 600D. This has a button on the front face of the fixture rather than the release pin on the top that the 300D Mark II had. Last few things, at the bottom of the yoke you have that hybrid mounting option where the whole thing is a junior pin, but it also fits onto a male baby pin like a C-stand, which would be perfectly reasonable if you were just mounting the fixture alone. Aputure advertises this light as a weatherproof light fixture to some degree, although in the rental industry that's not necessarily something that we test for. But you will notice that every input and output on this kit has these bulky rubber gasket caps, which would definitely help out in wet conditions. And speaking of those inputs and outputs, they are really heavy duty in this kit. Like, I'm seeing a noticeable difference in build quality over the 300D Mark II, for example, which was still good. Even this main power cable that runs from the control box to the light has this really robust housing and large locking collar. Alright, so let's talk about this control box. It's pretty serious in size, as you can tell. It weighs almost 25 pounds, and it comes in either gold or V-mount battery options. Those battery plates are on each side of this control box, and it also acts as a dual battery charger, which is really neat. On the bottom you see another large cooling fan there in the middle, and here on this side you have your 5-pin male and female XLRs for DMX in and out, and on this side this 3-pin XLR for 48-volt DC in, and the locking AC power input, and we'll talk about power draw and more importantly power output shortly. But other than that, on the back you have these nice metal feet so you can rest it down flat, and that quick release slab right here for Aputure's awesome quick release system that they have going there. And if DMX and an amazing app wasn't good enough for you, there's Ethernet and USB right here on this side. Finally, on the top you see that SF20 power connection with the rubber cap, some more ventilation, and this heavy-duty braided handle that is attached to these metal hooks. And this gives this sort of like a lived-in filmmaker vibe, which is cool considering it comes out of the box like this. Alright, now I want to go over the several ways that this fixture can be controlled. Most simply, we'll start out with the control box. You control everything from these 4 buttons and main scroller here, and it's really straightforward getting around the menu. When adjusting the light from the scrolling knob, I've noticed it's mostly really articulate, although it can get confused sometimes if you're really whipping it around. But one neat thing is you can just click the wheel and it'll increase the intensity by increments of 20%, which is a nice quick shortcut. This unit is also controllable via this remote control right here, which is not anything new for Aputure lights, and this controller is pretty limited in terms of control, but it's handy for a quick fix. Another way you can control this fixture is via DMX network, but that's no surprise. What really has people excited about using the Aputure ecosystem, myself included, is the Sidus Link app. This is the app Aputure uses to let its users control their light fixtures over Bluetooth, and it's seriously great. You have total control over this light from this app, and if you're using multiple Aputure fixtures on one shoot like I'm about to do today, the Sidus Link app becomes even more useful. Okay, before I take out two of these lights to actually shoot with them, let's talk about power in terms of both output and input. And then I want to quickly discuss just how one of these lights could compete against a small HMI like a 1.2K. Okay, the part we've all been waiting for. How powerful is this light? Well, first let's talk about power draw. This unit draws about 720 watts over an 8 amp current and has a 100 to 240 volt operating power it gets via this 20-foot locking AC cable. From 14.4 volt batteries like these Anton Bauers, it will only run the light at half power. You'll need much heftier batteries for full power. But luckily, half power is still very bright on this unit. Other than that though, this light can be powered by a 48 volt DC connection via 3-pin XLR. This light also has a studio mode, which basically tells the light that it's being controlled from a switcher or a studio lighting grid. Alright, output. So straight from the chip at full intensity, the Aputure 600D reads 22,150 lux at 1 meter and 2,600 lux at 3 meters. However, once you add the hyper reflector that comes with this kit, that shoots right up to just under 100,000 lux at 1 meter and 8,500 lux at 3 meters. And once you pass 100,000 lux, you're basically talking about direct sunlight intensity, just for reference. Finally, if you really want to bring the sun, with the 15-degree Fresnel attachment, that jumps up to 220,000 lux at 1 meter and about 30,000 lux at 3 meters. So what we have here is a very powerful chip-on-board LED light, especially paired up with those Fresnel heads. So one major thing Aputure is trying to get across here is that this fixture is capable of the same output as a 1.2K HMI, but with all the benefits of an LED fixture like low power draw and dimmability. So on paper, this may be true if you're just looking at the readings, but you have to put the build of the light into account. By itself, the chip-on-board style LED light can get very, very bright, but it won't throw light as far or as directional as a traditional HMI would. So it really depends on the application. If it's going to be a soft source anyways, the 600D is much more friendly to that. But if you wanted the source to have more of a beam, that's where your Joker or Airy 1.2 is going to be helpful. Alright, now that we know what this light is all about, for the rest of this video, I'm going to take you with me as I grab two of these 600D units and also two different Aputure lighting modifiers, and I'm going to try to get some nice cinematic looking daytime interiors before the sun goes down. So for this little shoot, I just wanted to use these two Aputure 600Ds to help me pull off this strong morning light sort of shoot. So I asked my friend Ben to help me out, and I'll link his YouTube channel below because he's awesome. And I pretty much let him take charge of the rigging and modifying of these lights so I could take some behind the scenes footage. So we pretty much decided immediately that the first thing we wanted to do is use one of these fixtures with the spotlight attachment to provide a strong scratch light for this china cabinet. This is doing a few things that are effective for this shot. One, it's striking the glassware inside the cabinet very nicely and giving this frame some highlight points behind my head, but primarily it's defining the geometries of the cabinet, putting me in a frame inside of a frame. And this is sort of a bonus too, but we got this nice reflection from the slide glass on the cabinet, and that's also framing my head nicely. Next, I still needed a key light on my face, so we ended up simply getting the other 600D staged at a similar angle with just the reflector on it. This was direct morning sunlight we were going for here, so it really didn't need much modification. Maybe a little diffusion would have been nice here when I looked at the final, but it certainly doesn't look unmotivated. So this is doing two major things. One, it's providing a strong key light on the far side of my face, and two, it's also doing some more accenting, like this big chair shadow on my laptop, and it's giving these other chairs some pop too. Okay, so last thing, I realized we never got to try this awesome lantern attachment from Aputure, so for one last shot we decided to get this lantern just outside these bay windows to achieve a much softer key. So keeping the scratch light doing what it's doing on the cabinet, now we have a much softer source providing my key light, and it also wraps around my face much more effectively. So now we have much less drastic of a fall off. Alright, so that's pretty much going to wrap it up on this video of some things that I think you should know about the Aputure LS600D Pro. And I hope you got to see from that little shoot there that we did that this light can just be like a filmmaker's best friend. It's a very, very powerful light considering the amount of power that it draws and the amount of heat that it generates. And also, it's a really versatile light, especially if you pair it up with the different aperture modifiers that are out there. So as always, if you have any questions or comments about the Aputure LS600D Pro, or if you own this light or have at least used it frequently, I want to hear about your experience with it. So drop a comment in the comment section below and we'll start a discussion. Also, if you happen to like this video, hit it with a thumbs up button down below to let me know you liked it. And if you're not already, subscribe to the channel. And that way, you'll be in the loop whenever we post new content, which is every week. So take care, and we'll see you in the next one.